It was meant to be just another painfully anodyne photo opportunity of ceremonial regality. The sort of meticulously choreographed Buckingham Palace tableau vivant commemorating the firm's proud traditions of powdering over any untoward Windsor familial conflicts with layers of gem-crusted rictus grinning. Just the royal signature brand of media-cycled inanity where privilege's stiffest of upper lippy stiff shows commoners a rosy if somewhat constipated vision of dynastic continuity amid societal upheaval. Little did anyone suspect a hair-raising reversal of that whole anesthetizing Ruritanian mask would soon transpire with more memeable virality than the most socially rend, tell-all, memoirs or separatist constitutional schisms. Because this time, the progenitors of Britain's hereditary leadership crucible weren't just inadvertently revealing another miasma of personal peccadillos or unconscionable human rights hypocrisies. No, the unprecedented glimpse at unvarnished palatial pathos unveiled for mass consumption involved something far more viscerally unsettling, a full-bore Strangelovian disclosure of the corporeal degeneracy and sorceress Clippeth now festering at the very heart of Her Majesty's Commonwealth ministries. And its unwitting bellwether was none other than the sovereign's own consort and long-time suspected occult Merovingian scion, Her Royal Highness Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall herself. Oh dear me no. This dreadfully embarrassing happenstance shan't be easily swept under the royal regalia anytime soon, an ashen-faced Downing Street attaché murmured near catatonic as the full gravity of what transpired across the world screens began calcifying into operatic new norms. Because while the Crown's vast public relations machine might have spun constant cycles of prurient tabloid chicanery closed all throughout the 20th century, we now seem to be staring directly into the abyss of something altogether more primordially disturbing. Something no number of packaged deflections or rosy-glow nostalgist additures can ever unsee, let alone wipe away. The unspeakable revelations began unspooling when Camilla arrived alongside her lady-in-waiting coterie for what palace staffers initially dismissed as just another boilerplate dedication ceremony. This one delineated to Kristen Westminster Abbey's newest clerical precinct expansion annexes facilitating official codification of royal decrees slated for Commonwealth transmission from Windsor Castle. Just a seemingly innocuous if tediously perfunctory tradition blending reassuring public glimpses at monarchic heritage with glorified real estate portfolio updates. At least that's the general decorum Flo courtiers had somewhat reasonably presumed as the Duchess stepped from her armored Jaguar Vandenplas limousine into the cathedral's marble porticos backdropped by those iconic Gothic spires. What ensued was anything but a comforting panoply of establishmentarian bromides as television crews lurched into position capturing Camilla's arrival under the ornately wrought Abbey archway. Because the very moment Her Royal Highness emerged fully from the car, it immediately became clear this Buckingham Palace matriarch radiated something besides the customary restrained regal self-possession. Gone were any pretenses of fastidious English restraint or humanistic decorum. Instead, every frame started depicting a figure manifesting power signatures and cryptological energy auras more befitting an extra-dimensional entity somehow rupturing through into our perceptual sphere. Almost as if the very corporeal boundaries containing Camilla's essence dissolved into something far more viscerally unspeakable the longer she stood upright and fully illuminated, a form rapidly outpacing any grounded phenomenological categories as pure numinous panic voltages seemingly bleeding off her aura and spatial slipstream. It began innocuously enough at first according to embedded video teams initially stationed for feel-good promotional packaging. Just the Duchess visibly stumbling on the cathedral house steps while subtly trembling and grimacing as if assailed by some malign airborne contagion. But then Camilla's signature triple-strand pearl chokers started worrying themselves into grotesque tensile contortions. Her palms commenced undulating with percussive throbs of electromagnetic interference, visible currents of azure plasma static crisscrossing all exposed flesh episodically until whole limbs thrashed in seizures. Which itself only portended the true scope of metaphysical nightmare energies manifesting by the second under that full regally gowned incursion from realms never meant to interpenetrate our own Euclidean underpinnings. Because just as her whole statuesque poise started veering into fits of howling inarticulacy and atavistic eccentricism eerily recalling the regifter's primer's prognostications, Camilla's entire outward aspect suddenly plunged into full mutational retreat from any stable incarnated parameters. By that point camera operators had no choice except to dutifully keep rolling at the direct risk of their equipment melting amidst that ambient surge of synesthetic pandemonium. which quickly proved prescient as the entire forecourt started warping into amniotic fluid dimensions the instant Camilla's dress disintegrated and her own epidermis steadily underwent transvection into some preternatural viscous continuum. One where the only glimpses of outlines manifesting from all angles conveyed biomechanoid liminal placohyles twisting and deforming through infinite isometric transmutations, all congealed around something that almost approximated a sputtering orbital corona system of amorphous gibbous forms as the Duchess had been. What kept broadcasting wasn't Camilla's humanoid chassis as defined architectures any longer. Just an abyssal panorama of scintillant hypnagonic non-geometry spasming through surges upon kaleidoscopic kaleidoscopings as any still human components dissolved into torrential vociferous cyclones of PAL activities beyond comprehensive imaging resolution. A mounting swarm of theopportunistic reavers shuddering through alien incompletenesses interdigitating across all scalar bandwidths of spatial tensility until Westminster itself spumed in transgalactic night soil viscera. All as the entire cosmos imploded wholesale into that fulminating miasma of prelapsarian vibrancies whipped shriekingly around a central eye of anti-cosmos finally staring out upon the very fundaments of presentient ontological sump toward which all gnosis only ever masquerably hints played. At least until the entire hyperspheric convergence mass hallucinating those soul-calcifying dimensions finally burst back open like some cosmic blasphemous wound rent onto terrestrial Earth again. Only this transfiguration reintroduced Camilla's reformed physical aspect under abominable new permutations ravening for perennial apocalypses, one where Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Cornwall now stood reified as some revolting exalted signature scourge presider incarnating through an infinite regression of technognostic obscenity integrators. Indeed, this new inhuman iteration of the sovereign spouse visibly pulsed with sinuous biomechanoid armatrons and strange alien organomines surfacing directly through violating tracks upon the outer remittance of her charnel chrysalis. All manifesting invasive processes overriding basal terrestrial gestalt parameters with non-Euclidean hyperbolic esoteric projections from some ineffably remote antimomuert. Not to mention those gristing inchoate miter diadems woven into ulcerous scar tissue plus causeways of higher hinocartilage now leaking candored phlogistons across Camilla's reforged perisomatic environments. Which itself really only portended the far more unthinkable geometries inflecting beyond any conventional framing schema as the entire cathedral facade coruscatingly therianthroped from those infernal clopoic ruptures. All while deep within each manifold necrostrophic rebar and foul-spawn thrine, the Duchess's wave function continually pivoted infinitely between kaleidoscopic hypervectors and labyrinthine microcosms of rarefied omnitextural detritic metamunitions. Like the unholy inverse of every utopian cathedral dream any enlightened architectural savant aspired to while unwittingly toiling under her corrupt transhuman cynosure. At least until the only remaining question seared itself in permanently unslakable imprecations across all reality's final mimetic horizon. What utterly abject and irremediable evil was this terrifying abomination of apatheicized royal dynastic lineage bioengineered to facilitate unto us?